You walked through this door. And I'm like, no, I'm done. We're done. We're not talking about it anymore. Like those kind of fighters, I don't want to talk about it no more. There's also people like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to play. It's like, what? You could have had the winning hand, but you stopped right before you could find out. You know?
Yeah. It's like go fish, you know? When you hear go fish so many times, you're like, fuck, man.
Right?
You're like, no, I got a 7. I have a 7. You just get so used to going fish that you actually forget all the cards you have in your hand.
Right? Or it's a game of poker and then you're too intimidated by the other person that you fold.
Yeah. Yep.
Trust yourself. Trust yourself. Okay, and then the next one is self-destructiveness. So, substance abuse and other self-destructive behaviors may serve to derail success, which happens all the time. You know, people who have the potential. You know what? I know a young man who is like this. The most potential in the world, but you're too busy getting distracted with partying and hanging out with your friends, you know? And I think it's really hard when you're tempted by your friends and living a normal life. And I feel like as an athlete, for me, when I was like that back in the day, I knew nothing else. So I didn't really miss out on that. That wasn't something that I yearned. I was like, I want to go play. No, I had my friends who were a part of this athletic journey with me. But when you are one of those kids that kind of are very social, and then you still need to have that self-discipline and drive, it is really hard to stay on that track where it becomes a self-destructiveness of you just indulging a little bit too much in that play, you know?
Yeah.
But so the last one that I want us to elaborate on, and the reason why I want us to elaborate on this topic a little bit when it comes to fear of success, is because I tried to be this person, which is a perfectionist. You strive for perfection, and when you inevitably fall short, that is the reason enough not to proceed.
Yep.
So that one is such a big one for me because I felt like I worried a lot about how people looked at me and how they saw me, like perception. Perception was such a thing that I held up so high. And so I was reading also, so coming from perfectionism, I was reading Dare to Lead. Have you ever heard of that book by Brené Brown?
Yeah, I did, but I didn't read it.
So there's a part where she talks about perfectionism. And it's a self-destructive, exactly like Anne said in this article. It's a self-destructive and addictive belief system that fuels this primary thought. So this is the thought. If I look perfect and I do everything perfectly, I can avoid or minimize the painful feelings of blame, judgment, and shame. But this is what we do to ourselves. So perfectionism is more about perception than internal motivation. And there is no way to control perception no matter how much time and energy we spend trying. Perfectionism actually sets us up to feel shame, judgment, and blame, which then leads to even more shame and self-blame. It's my fault. I'm feeling this way because I'm not good enough. Oh my God. This was me. This was completely me. In my 20s, girl. That was me. You know what I mean?
Then you decided to grow up.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so hard, and it's like, it's crazy. It's like when I read stuff like this, I'm almost like, oh, dear diary. Oh, and you want to cry about like, oh, that was me. Oh, that poor girl back then. God, she had it rough. Like
I know,
reflecting on yourself and your sorrows of how you were back then. But it's like, no, it's a serious thing, you know?
Yep. No, it is.
Any of these things, like low goals, all that stuff.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, like I agree with what you're saying, but for me, like my fear of like failure, like it actually like took a toll on my health. Like it gave me like crazy anxiety, you know,
Really?
because fear comes with worry.
Yes.
And worry, if you worry too much,
Mm-hmm.
that's how you become like, you know, that's how you get like anxiety and become like crazy.
Funny
You know?
that you say that. Funny that you say that, because fear of failure is a sign of an anxiety disorder.
It
Continue.
is, and it's like worried, like very worrisome, and it's really not a good feeling. So, just to like piggyback on what you were saying, because I was like, okay, so I have this thing, and you know, at the end of the day, if something is harming you and how you are, you're like anxious all the time.
Yeah.
That's not good. So you want to like, you know, you want to remedy the issues in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I was like, okay, why am I so scared to fail? You know, because it's like, one, the worst thing that you can do is just fail.
Yeah.
But then I said to myself, okay, I can learn something from this, you know, and how to like look at it in a different way, you know. So then I started like saying to myself, oh, I'm gonna recover my L's. I'm going to turn my L's into a win. You know, I used to be like, okay, if I fail, you know what? This happened to someone else, and I'm sure they were able to get out of it, so there has to be a way out of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So I started, like, saying these things to myself, and then to, like, learn how to remedy the issues in my life, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, the worst case, and then I told myself, I'm like, the worst thing that could ever happen to someone in life is death. Like, I think that is like that's like the worst thing that can happen to you is death. So
Yeah.
who cares? Like, it didn't kill you, so that means you can make it better. You know, find another way.
Find a solution.
You know, and that's when I started like literally like telling myself that, you know what, the absolute worst thing that can ever happen to me in my life is dying. So as long as I'm not dead, I can figure this out. You know?
Yeah. And it's so crazy because, like, we all do this to ourselves. We have these, like, irrational thoughts that just kind of take us down, like, a spiral. And then one thought leads to the next, which leads to the next, which leads to the next. And, like, before we know it, we've dug ourselves into this, like, deep hole. And we're like, I can't do this. I'm not worth it. I can't do any of this shit.
Yeah.
And it becomes this paralyzing thought. And it's like, how do you get to a point where you literally get over yourself? Like, how do I get over myself? Get over these crazy ass thoughts that I have? And that's paralyzing me from doing all these things. And at the end of the day, you literally just gotta shoot your shot. Take a chance. Take a chance on yourself. You owe it to yourself. And it's like, I think I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? Every day of our life, we are going to be battling fear.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. In every situation. The day we fall in love with somebody, it's like, okay, we're having a fear of them falling out of love. And then the day we have our kids, it's like, I have a fear of not being a good parent. Like, we'll always go through these different obstacles of fearing, you know? And and it's like, okay, like, how do I get over this? It's like, just shoo that thought away until it becomes a reality. Like, we can't keep worrying about things that haven't happened to us yet. But we're just built that way. We're built to worry about these things. But don't let it get you into to have like this phobia, this fear of like, because I'll tell you, on this health line, it tells you these physical symptoms that happen from the shit that we do to ourselves, where we can, so you end up having a freaking panic attack, pretty much. That's what it says. Difficulty breathing, an unusual fast heart rate, tightness or pain in your chest, trembling, shaking, and all of this stuff, I think, also ties into mental health. Like, it's all a domino effect in how we deal with situations in life. And a fear of failure is our irrational thoughts that lead into anxiety. it's all a ripple effect. So if we can like take a step back and really like calm ourselves and be like, you know what? Why am I even thinking these things? It hasn't even happened. The worst that can happen is death. But by me going for my dreams and doing all this stuff, am I going to die from it? No. So just give it a shot. Just try it out. You know?
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I mean, I feel like if you fear failure, the only way it's very simple. The only way you can get rid of fear in anything is being optimistic. So just having that level of optimism in your heart, in your mind, because you can't be optimistic and like worried all the time. You know what I mean? It kind of cancels each other out.
Yeah, it does cancel each other out.
Yeah, it just kind of cancels each other out. So I would say it's like if you are a fearful person, if you are scared and worried and just failing is just like, all hell will break loose. Just the thought of it, I would tell everybody, try and practice being optimistic. Look for the brighter side in everything. Literally in everything. I'm like practicing my optimism so much that I'm just like, you know, if something doesn't happen, I'll try, but I'm good with it regardless.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I'm good with it. Because you know what? If it's not happening for me, guess what? I guess it means I don't need it. You know?
Exactly. And I feel like a part of changing the fear or conquering the fear, fighting through it, is definitely changing your mental health, like the negative thoughts, turning them into positive, you know, because we all have this like this mental talk that's like always negative, you know, like, oh, I look too fat today. It's like, no, okay, well, I'm gonna look fat with a PH today, okay? I'm gonna look real good, you know? And like just trying to like change the narrative that you keep telling yourself in your head. Try it. Anytime you have a negative thought, go back and be like, oh my God, I did it again. First, notice how many negative thoughts you have a day, and then try and switch it. Change a word, like cut the phrase in half, turn it around somehow, but like start telling yourself, it's like that fake it till you make it. Start giving yourself those positive affirmations instead of negative ones. And then after a while, you'll just realize, I know that's what I did. Because I keep sitting around thinking, like, how did I change my thought process? Like, how does someone actually do that? You know? And now I'm just like, okay, I still have negative thoughts here and there, but I don't let them consume me and I don't let them take over. Like, it'll run through my mind, and then I'll be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to switch it around. I'm going to switch it around and just change it into a positive, and then we're just going to push it off to the side if it won't go away.
Yeah. And, like, how do you change it into a positive? Like, I like to actually visualize the outcome of whatever it is that I'm pursuing, you know? And the outcome could, like, I like to visualize all the great things and all the bad things. And most of the time, there's so many more good things that would come out of it than the negative. Then I'm like, oh, who cares about all this bad stuff? I want all the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to try and visualize all, like, your potential outcomes in, you know, whatever it is that you want to do to be successful, which will ultimately hinder your fear of, like, failing, essentially. And you know what? Even if you do fail, what are the best stories? The best stories are ones that come out of tragedy.
And that's how we learn the most. Yeah, we learn the most from failure.
Like, Tyler Perry was, like, homeless, you know, and he was like living this very rough life, and now he really like put everything into himself and his vision, you know, and his story wouldn't be half as interesting if we didn't know like all the bad things that he's been through, you know. It's like he came out with a triumphant like success, you know.
Well, yeah, because he believed in himself and he kept choosing himself. And it was like, and then I guess he was in a position where now he had no choice. He had to just keep going, It's like, and that's one thing I always say, like, oh, my dad told me, but yeah, I'm such a daddy's girl. But my dad would always tell me, like, whatever